The rupee has depreciated 7% year to date and is on the verge of touching 80 against the US dollar. Parents of students who are set to fly abroad for their higher education this year will have to shell out more because of the rupee's weakness. Are there any solutions, any workarounds, especially for parents who are falling marginally short of the targeted budget? To get the answer to this question, we spoke to Mr. Neeraj Khanna, who is co-founder and director, Spark Career Mentors, one of Bengaluru's leading education consultancies. Welcome to our show.
Good afternoon, Sanjay. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So the rupee has been constantly depreciating against the dollar. It is now on the verge of touching 80 and is down about 8% year to date. What is your advice to parents who plan to send their child abroad for, say, PG education this year?
So there is a big impact. And the advice to parents is look at the entire cost of the education. One, a lot of times parents are only looking at the tuition fee or at most looking at the accommodation cost. But when you're sending your child to a more expensive geography, everything will cost a lot more. So look at your tuition, look at accommodation, food, transportation, mobile phone, data, Wi-Fi, travel up and down from India, medical expenses. So look at the entire bundle. That's one. The second is don't get scared, right? Don't take a panic decision. If you've got admission in a good college already and you're about to send your child, then it's fine. There are ways to work around it. The third is also look at the long run, right? Don't just look at the short term. College is not the end objective, right? So just because you're looking at a college abroad, don't be assured that any country will allow your child to stay on. So look at the end objective. If you are a business family and you want your child to go abroad, study and come back, that's fine. But if you want your child to go abroad and then live there, then have that as an objective and a criteria in selecting your countries and colleges, right? So, and the last is that look at the entire cost of education. So till now, we have said, look at a 2 to 3% inflation every year. This year onwards, because the dollar impact that we are saying, look at a 5 to 7% increase every year, right? Because nobody's able to predict if this is a one-time thing or this will keep happening. And so keep a buffer of 5 to 7% as increase in cost year on year. So that's the advice that we are giving students and parents right now.
Are you seeing any impact on the ground in terms of, say, number of people who want to go abroad or in any other terms?
The dollar impact has been a very recent, this sudden big impact has been a very recent phenomenon. So we are seeing an impact. We are seeing fear. There are two kinds of families that we work with. There are families who are financially very strong, where it is not such a fear, but there are families which are not financially very strong, who are looking for, trying to figure out where to get the money from already. They've pulled in all their resources, and they are finding an optimal solution for their child education. For them, it's a big impact. Right? People who've taken a loan, people who've sold a property, it's a big impact. There are very few who have withdrawn from this plan, who are now saying we will not send our child abroad. There are those cases. I would say about 4 to 5% are withdrawing actually and saying we will send our child to a college in India. There are 95% who are still going ahead. And out of that 95%, I would say there is a significant majority which is not large business houses, but executives, working in organizations, salaried professionals who are worried. And while they are sending, they're also worried.
Are there any workarounds for these kind of people? On the margin, perhaps they do have 90% of the funds, but are falling short a little. Are there any workarounds for them?
So, Sanjay, there are workarounds, but the workarounds will help only to an extent, right? So the workarounds which people are already using and will use further are go in for additional loan. Or if you've not taken a loan till now, go in for a loan. A lot of parents and students don't want their children to work alongside their university. They're saying, going to study, I'll fund it, especially Indian parents, go study, put in all your effort into studying. Now parents and students are saying, okay, maybe it's not such a bad idea. Pick up some part-time work on the weekend or in your holidays and so on and so forth. We've also seen parents put plans together to say, in your next summer vacation or December vacation, instead of spending 2 lakhs to come back to India and go, stay put there and take a part-time job, right? Get some earning there. The other thing people are doing is look at countries where the cost of education is lower. Also, there are countries which allow you to, with the 4-year undergrad or the 2-year masters, is extended by a period where you can work full-time. And then that's called a co-op period. So there are several such options which allow people to either get an extra funding from the parent side or the child side. And lastly, of course, we are also advising kids to say, let's be more frugal. Let's get the bang for the buck. Let's stretch the dollar as much as we can. So, if you were planning to stay in a single room, let's take a room with 3 people. Some places staying off campus is cheaper. Don't stay on campus. Instead of eating out, cook. And these small differences can add up to a significant amount. If your tuition fee is, let's say, $30,000, you could be spending $50,000 a year, putting everything else together. We've seen families where the costs, apart from tuition, they're managing in these countries in less than $10,000, all put together. And there are people who spend $20,000, $30,000. So it depends on how the child has been brought up, but to be frugal is the need of the hour. And that's another thing that will help.
There are students who are already abroad. How will the depreciation of the rupee impact these people? And
so in some ways it's a double-edged sword. In some ways, they have the tiger by the tail. The kids who are planning to go this year or next year or 2 years from now, they can still put backup plans in place. If you're already abroad, you've spent a semester, you've got 3 semesters to go, or whatever undergrad masters you're doing, the bullet has been fired, right? So, we've had calls from parents and students to say, should I come back? The cost is really hitting us. We were already at the sort of borderline of our expense. So it is hitting them quite bad. On the other side, there are people for whom 2 semesters or 2 years are already over. So they are towards the fag end of their program. So they are less impacted. But impact nevertheless is there. And more than anything, they don't have a choice to back out. Or at least the advice we are giving them is that, look, don't panic. You're there. Let's try and find a solution. Let's work around the situation. Don't panic and suddenly come back. Right? There are ways to work around this. But the pressure on them is greater because they're already there. So the fear, the pressure, the impact of the dollar, the exchange rate is much bigger on them.
Is there any advice for these kind of students or their parents?
Like I said, don't panic, first of all. When panic and emotions take over, logic backs away. So let's stay calm. Let's find a solution. The biggest advice for the student is be frugal. Try and balance your academic requirement with part-time work. There are several, again, COVID has brought us to a situation where a lot of work can be now done online. So the student doesn't need to travel 20 miles or somewhere to go and work. They can work from home, especially people who are postgrad students. So they're sitting in their dorm room and earning $15, $20 an hour. So find those opportunities, support your parents in this journey. The second is, can you take an additional loan? In the worst case, there are people who are selling an additional property or whatever. Unfortunately, we are just coming out of COVID, and a lot of our parents have seen a reduction in their income levels also. So that's why I say it's a double-edged sword with what is happening, where the family income has reduced, the costs have gone up. So the biggest advice is don't panic. Let's put a plan together. On one side, be frugal. On the other side, let's try and find ways to improve your ways to fund your college, which is work part-time, take additional loan. You can be a teaching assistant in your campus, do online work, but stay calm. The moment you get panicky, whether you have the right funding or not, things start falling apart. And remember your end goal. Your end goal is not the college. Your end goal is to be successful. So if there is a bump in the journey, we'll get over it. But the end goal is to be successful. So alongside, start looking for jobs, internships. Keep your eyes on the goal, especially if you're there already. Right? Do your networking and find the right jobs. Make sure if your parents are putting in that money, or you are working and earning the extra buck, or you're doing internships, trying to be extra frugal, make sure you get value out of it finally, right? And you can do that only if you stay calm, so don't panic. So that's pretty much the advice for the people who are already there.
Finally, Mr. Khanna, some advice on choice of course, on choice of college, not exactly course, but choice of college and choice of country in view of things becoming more expensive. Give us a sense of which destinations are more expensive, less expensive.
So again, Sanjay, the advice I always give people is there is no country, there is no college, there is no course that guarantees success. Add value to yourself and you will be successful. Be self-aware, right? Understand what your strengths and weaknesses are. If you're not the brightest bloke on the block, then don't aim for a super competitive place where you will feel like a loser. So that's the second one. Third is build your criteria for where you want to go smartly. Don't just want to go to Berkeley because your neighbor's kid went to Berkeley. Don't say US because it's cool to tell everybody I'm going to the US. If your goal is to go study and then come back to India and do whatever in India, that's fine. Then that's your criteria. If your goal is to go to a country where you can find a job and live there forever, then criteria needs to be defined differently. If your goal is, look, my budget is $20,000 or $30,000, I need to manage in that, then that has to be a strong criteria. Don't be shy of saying that to the child, or as a family, saying that to the person you're working with. Now, the most expensive, of course, is the US, right? It continues to be the most expensive in terms of not just the tuition fee, but also the other expenses that you have. Within the US, remember, state universities are cheaper. So try and stay away from private universities if budget is a big constraint. If you want to look at continuing to live there, you need to pick a STEM course. So at least you get a 3-year OPT extension at the end of your student visa. But remember, at the end of that OPT also, H-1B is a lottery system. So you might or might not get it. The cheaper geographies are Hong Kong, Europe, they are cheaper. If you can speak German and study in German, Germany offers free education. They can offer a lot of scholarships. Japan offers a lot of scholarships, but you need to be able to speak Japanese. It's much easier and more logical to go to countries where you can study in English. It's much easier in those geographies. If you're looking at going to a country which will have a highest probability of you getting a work permit, citizenship in the long run, look at countries like Canada. They offer the same education system as the US. You have the flexibility of a double major, minor, and all that stuff. And they will give you a work permit and so on and so forth. So those are the kind of things you should bear in mind when you're looking at it. Build your criteria smartly and be sensible about it.
Thank you, Mr. Khanna. I hope your many viewers will find your tips useful and will be able to make it to their destination. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sanjay. Pleasure to speak with you always.